Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our hit podcast within a podcast, Between Two Roles. I am your host, Ryan Mossbarger, and today I have a very special guest, Matt Canavan. Say hello, Matt.
Hello, Matt.
Pat did a similar joke. So, Matt, if you are unfamiliar, and it's entirely possible that you are unfamiliar with this podcast and its format, I'm going to ask you a series of questions, seemingly fine and dandy, but they are going to slowly worm their way into your brain cage, and I'm going to get all of your most important secrets out of you. Are you prepared for that?
Well, I am now.
Are you prepared for a listenership in the tens of people to know your deepest, darkest secrets?
Tens, really? Is it that much?
Maybe we might be creeping up to the hundreds. Who knows? There was a part of me that like compulsively checked our like listening numbers and stuff like that.
Okay.
And I've since stopped because I found it to be extremely unhealthy.
You know what? I remember I kind of had a little bit of a similar sentiment when I started with the what is it, the Common Geeking program, and I was like, who's really listening? But at the end of the day, it was a lot of fun, and it was an excuse to do something with my dear friends. And
oh no, that's exactly why.
And here we are.
And here we are. So I've asked this question. This is the first question I've asked everybody else so far. So this is my first question to you. How do you know the other members of the podcast? And that podcast being Dice Populi, the very important and groundbreaking Dungeons & Dragons podcast, where we switch out Dungeon Masters every campaign.
Yeah, what, like every 6 months or so?
Something like that. Well, for Chowder, yes, 6 months. For me, I think it was 2.5 months.
I mean,
3 months,
on average.
Max.
So I went to high school with Pat and Colin. Pat and Colin knew each other in middle school. They kind of grew up in parallel, whatever. And then I kind of joined the mix, and Pat and we were both in band. We had a very similar friend group. We were into the arts. We had a lot of the same classes. I didn't meet Colin until like 10th grade. He was always like the guy you were like, oh, yep, that's Colin.
That is exactly how I would describe Colin.
And the thing is, like, I know that he would describe himself the exact same way. So I'm not holding back anything here. But, we had like some classes together, and we all just kind of, went through the system. Obviously I know you through Pat, because I think you guys went to college together.
We did. We went to college together. We're both engineers.
Yes. And Chowder is a year below myself, Pat, and Colin. And Chowder was we just had like very similar friend groups, and we just kind of ended up hanging out a bunch. And yeah, it's a good time. We all made it through the Schenectady High School Schenectady City School District. God, it's a fucking tongue twister.
Is it a hard district to get through? Is it like rigorous? Maybe in terms of scholastic, or is it like a prison setup where you got to beat your way out of it?
You get what you put into it. I think that's the best way I can say it. There are opportunities there that, I think that we all took advantage of, and, it's really up to the person, like what they put into it.
Gotcha. Yeah, you hear that, Schenectady school system losers? You didn't try hard enough. That's why.
I think that's like one of the most political answers I've ever given.
So you're being very precise with your language.
I'm trying.
Hey, man, I know.
Tens of people will judge me. This could ruin my presidential campaign in like what, 10, 15 years?
15 years. I mean, I honestly, not to get too political, but I don't think you really have. I don't think anybody has to worry about ruining the political campaigns anymore. I think it's all just fine.
Challenge accepted. Not really, but
yeah, challenge. Time to go to the bottom of the barrel. Were you always kind of interested into the podcasting kind of sphere, or was that something that maybe you got talked into by Colin or Pat?
So
How
it
did you
was
get into it?
100% getting talked into it. And I'm going to share the first of many deep, dark secrets. Uh, Podcasts, like, I really don't listen to that many of them. Maybe I'll tune into like one or two, but there are no podcasts where I would consider myself a regular, avid listener.
Excuse me while I
And,
make a note and add for a
you
dramatic like
know,
bass drop in this moment. Really? Like you
I
don't have any podcast that you listen to on a regular basis?
I I don't know what it is. Like, I
Because there
know for
is
some
one correct
people.
answer, and it's our podcast.
So I will circle back to that, but I think the thing for me is like, if I need to like sit down and just like put something on in the background, some people put on a podcast. For me, like, I need to commit fully to it, and just like that's like the only thing I'm listening to, like I'm reading a book, or
Mm,
I'm just gonna throw some music on, and I can just kind
gotcha.
of, that would be background noise. Now, in regards to our podcast, I listen to that at least 3 or
Many
4
times.
times when I'm editing it.
That is
So
true.
I think
You
you
get
could
it.
cut me some slack there.
Yeah, you get it in the worst way. I'm definitely into some podcasts, and there are some that I listen to on like a regular rotation. It's a
Hmm.
lot less than it used to be. When I used to go into the office, I would always have a podcast going on in my ear. Like it
Yeah.
for 8 hours a day, I'd be listening to a podcast. I'd constantly be looking for podcasts to listen to.
Yeah.
And it's less than, oh, you go ahead.
No, no, no. Sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no. And it's less than just because I'm working from home now. And if I do need to like diffuse my focus, I have a million more outlets. I don't know how I've gotten started to doing it, but like to focus on my work, I do need to listen to podcasts though.
Hmm.
My job requires reading hundreds of pages of like very technical material, and I don't know how I've gotten to the point of being able to do it, but I can listen to a podcast and read like a page every like 20 seconds and still somehow process both streams separately.
Okay. That's fair. And, that's not to say that there aren't, like, there's some fantastic podcasts out there, especially with the people who we've collabed with. It's just not my cup of tea. And that wasn't something that I didn't really realize until I started working on the Common Geeking program, when Colin and our friends Jeff, Austin, Chowder, Keenan, that whole squad, when we
Mhm.
started doing that. Um, and I also was doing some editing for that as well, which was my first foray into the editing of podcast world
Gotcha,
thing.
gotcha. Yeah,
So
so
yeah.
do you still currently do anything with Common Geeking Program, or are you still is that kind of on the sidelines right now?
Um, I have not been on an episode in a very long time, at least like 2,
Samesies.
3 years. I definitely kind of still peek my head into the Discord to see what they're doing, if there's anything fun they're doing. But I think for the most part, I've pretty much stepped back. I might still be donating to them on the Patreon.
I know I am. That is the I get the little thing on my
So
email like every month.
yep.
So I'm technically I guess it all goes to the same wallet. So I'm supporting the current podcast we're on.
Right. Right.
For Common Geeking Program, I don't remember if we've ever done an episode together on Common Geeking Program.
We
I'm
never
trying
did.
to think.
I can guarantee you off the top of my head, we did not.
Yeah, I can't remember. I don't think we ever did. So on Common Geeking Program, we all had like our little nerd nerfdom, nerfdoms. I was just nerd serfdoms, where we were kind of like the expert in that domain. And, I think mine was like a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons and a little bit of like sci-fi stuff. Do you remember what your like domain was? Like your main contributing thing that you would always bring to the table?
I always tried to make a point of shaking it up a little bit. I think I remember it might have been an episode where I was hosting it, and the topic that I gave people to talk about and to try to relate to was uh, just like talking about forms of appreciation of like a of like a of a fandom or something, and like the different ways that it shows. And in particular, I chose the Potter Puppet Pals. Remember those old videos with like the puppets? Do you ever see those?
I
The
do.
mysterious ticking noise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
I
use that just like as as like a way to foray into, that was back when
that was
Harry
my
Potter was
niche.
still like kind of okay before all that shit went down. Um
Yeah.
I think there was an episode where I ended up talking about uh Portal, Portal 2, where we're talking about like AI and stuff like that. And then maybe I talked about Death Note at some point.
Yeah, so it's very broad. Kind of, yeah, just like
Yep.
a little pieces everywhere. Speaking of which, I do think it would suck to be like that, the type of person that is, yes, I am a Harry Potter expert, and then to like see where things have gone recently and be like, oh,
Hmm.
there's a huge subset of people that just can't stand Harry Potter anymore for very like good reasons, and I
I
I should just let this knowledge wither on the vine.
Yeah, no, I will appreciate like the memories and stuff and like the fun times I had reading it and thinking like, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a goddamn wizard. Like how like that was fun. That was fun back when I was younger. But I appreciate it for what it was, I guess, before. Uh, I think this might be a little spicy. I'm okay with appreciating most art, like if it means like you acknowledge, yes, the artist is a piece of shit. I
Yeah,
think
I think that's
it's
fair. I think
it's a really it's really hard to it just feels like such kind of a blurred line at times, like, and
yeah,
no, like,
it's
I don't
fuzzy.
know.
Were you like a nerdy late bloomer? Did you like, have you always been a nerd? Have you had phases in your quote unquote nerddom?
I would call myself a self-sheltered nerd growing up, where I had a lot of fun, like reading the old Spider-Man comic books. We got them for my dad's birthday one year, and then I ended up taking them from him, just reading through all of them. um I remember just like a lot of I guess the whole I guess nerddom is the best way to describe it, but it was never something that was really open and public about.
Hmm.
Even through college, there really wasn't a lot of opportunities to really express that, like how much fun I had just kind of deep diving into whatever fandom it was. Um, and I guess I would say it really wasn't until the working on the podcasts, which I guess was 2016, 2017 was when that started. So I would, yeah, definitely a very, very late bloomer regarding all that stuff.
Okay. So yeah, just kind of, you've come into your power a little later in life. You're saying you like to dive into nerddoms. Like, what are some of the more recent nerddoms that you really like took a dive into and explored?
So I have definitely deep dove
It's
into
called hentai and it's art.
no comment, but definitely started to dive into Magic the Gathering a little bit.
Ooh, okay, that's a
Um,
slippery slope right there. That's an expensive slippery slope.
yeah, yeah. My friend managed to convince like two or three of us now to start playing Commander, and
That's how it starts.
it started, yeah. But it's been a lot of
Commander
fun.
is the Adderall of Magic the Gathering. Soon you're going to be ripping straight lines of like old of $100 cards as you're playing in
You know,
tournaments. Yeah.
it's funny that you say, "Oh, it's just a hobby. Oh, it's just a hobby," and then next thing you know, you look down. Fuck! How do I have $2,000 worth of cards? Not that I am not there yet, but
Yet. Yet is the operative word. I mean, so I got into book collecting. So I collect like
ooh,
tabletop RPG books. So I have stuff from like the very beginning of Dungeons and Dragons. I have some collector's sets of things, and I'm there right there with you. If I went through and like calculated and tabulated all of the quote unquote great deals I've gotten, I'm sure it's in the thousands of dollars. I know for a fact it's in the thousands of
Yeah.
dollars.
I think one of the other, I guess not really a nerddom, I guess could be, but I also I really enjoy playing with the different tools that other people make for D&D. So like something
Hmm.
like Foundry.
Ooh, yeah,
I
Foundry.
I had a lot of fun, just building up my own server and just starting to go to town, playing with all the mods and stuff. Kind of felt like almost like Skyrim with like the amount of like modules and
Oh yeah,
stuff that there were to
it's
play with. And don't get me started on Skyrim. I put too much time into that.
yeah,
Um,
Foundry's intimidating. So I bought a license within the last 6 months. Maybe it was 6 months ago exactly at this point. And I started to work on that stuff, and then I just got lost in all of the mods and little add-ons you can do. And then I just never like got it ready for game time.
yep, yep, yeah.
Ugh.
We all we just have the server that I use, and then we use that for our live game, which is a lot of fun.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
I think my biggest hurdle right now with like actually going full Foundry is that I've invested a decent chunk of money in Roll20. And
Mm,
Roll20 doesn't have a lot of connectivity to Foundry. If I'd invested in D&D Beyond, though, there's a lot of really good tools to basically use those things
there
simultaneously.
there are ways.
Yeah, there's ways.
That's all I'll say without getting in legal trouble. Where
Yeah,
there's a will,
so
there's a way.
there's a will, there's a way. I think there is some way to do some Roll20 stuff, but it's just like it's a little complicated. But no, Foundry is really cool.
Hmm.
And I'm still hoping that I can get the wherewithal and the time to actually like set up the server and start using it, because I really like the way that you can do spell effects. Like you can actually show spell effects, and you have
Yep.
like you can do cones in it. Because that's like one thing I was trying to figure out just last night with my Dungeons and Dragons game. One of the players like, so how do I figure out like a 60-foot cone? And I was like, oh, there's definitely a tool for that in Roll20. There's not. There's no
Nope.
tool for that,
Nope.
which I
We
think is
did
wild.
my first exposure to Roll20. We ended up playing. It was a Greek themed campaign, Odyssey of the Dragonlords,
Mm.
and I think it was I can't remember if it was the writers from Fallout that ended up making this, or it was like from
Ooh.
somewhere. But you're in this ancient Greece themed world with a whole pantheon of gods, and they've incorporated the gods into customized backgrounds. And you're basically racing against a clock to defeat the Titans, all that stuff. A lot of fun. But we did that solely through Roll20, and it had its painful moments.
Yeah, Roll20 can be a real pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And I probably shouldn't say that because
Yeah.
I do have hopes, because I actually
I
work on
don't.
so one of the things I moonlight on is Four Quarters podcast, and it's actually sponsored by Roll20. So I
Oh,
probably shouldn't
so
be.
we're gonna cut a lot of this.
I might have to cut a little bit of it.
That's fine.
Not that they listen. So you said you kind of delve into all sorts of tools for tabletop RPG stuff. So is it just like tabletop software, or do you dive
It's
into
a lot
books and things like that? Or
of it is looking at like the different mechanics or the different tables and systems that people use to solve the problems of the 5th edition. So I
mm,
remember I can't I can't remember the guy's exact name. I feel like kind of hitting myself in the head. But he basically brought back the Paragon actions into 5e, where and basically allowed you to create these more focused creature blocks.
hmm,
Totally automated. Basically gave like creatures different roles. It was a lot more tactical. It was very, very cool. And I remember I played a lot with
that's
um
pretty cool.
yeah. Um yeah, it's always kind of funny just seeing how far people go to solve problems, I think.
Oh yeah.
Um you know, if people, I don't know. It's just very interesting to me.
So have you played like previous editions of Dungeons and Dragons, like 3.5 or 4 or anything like that?
I have not. No.
Okay. Because I was gonna say, there's a lot of people I know that are really dig on like 3.5 slash Pathfinder, and they like the crunch of it, but it's really hard for them to get a game going, especially now that like Pathfinder's gone into its second edition.
Right.
And there's just some of that they're missing from 5e. And one of the threads I found, and I ended up backing this Kickstarter, it's called Level Up 5e. So it uses 5e as like a basis for their system, but then it goes in and changes a lot of stuff and just adds like a couple extra toggles in places. They completely redo the ranger class, and it's very interesting. And like one of their main premises is that 5e, at least from Wizard of the Coast perspective and what it supports, it seems to be combat focused, and it's let role play and it's let exploration kind of like wither on the vine a bit. And this one is like, we are going to very much, combat's still going to be what it is. It's still going to be good, but we are going to give you a lot of skills and powers and fun things that you can do to invigorate role play and exploration. We're going to make it so that like, if you want to have an exploration campaign, you're like in a ranger, you're going to be really important and you're going to get to use your skills all the time and you're going to be like integral to what's going on.
Oh,
So
very
I'm very interested in that. And I have the books now and I've looked through them and it kind of does as advertised. It actually is really good. So it's interesting to see what other people bring into it. And I mean, they went as far as to have a Kickstarter and get a ton of pre-orders and like make their own subset of 5e to fix the problems of 5e. So I'm never not surprised by the lengths that people will go to still play Dungeons and Dragons, but to tweak it to the point of it basically being an entirely different beast.
Well, that's it. Well, because at a certain point, when does it stop being fifth edition? You know.
The ship
So
of Theseus.
let me. Well, exactly. Right. You replace all the parts, and then what are you left with? Yeah. I
Have you
mean,
have you played any other tabletop RPGs besides well we play Quest and we play D&D 5e, but have you played any other tabletop RPGs besides that?
so I was gonna say I did do like maybe one or two sessions of a Pathfinder thing that I
Ooh,
thought was fun.
Pathfinders.
And I enjoyed the crunch. Like that's the kind of person I am. Like I like the like being able to play with the mechanics of it. Um and then I've also played a little bit of Call of Cthulhu, which was very fun.
Did you play with
Um
Chowder? Was that the game?
no. No, it was not.
Chowder
But
did like a one shot or something like that.
nice. Yeah. We I think we did it was like the starter or like beginner um like session or little mini campaign, kind of basically like the Lost Minds equivalent
Yeah, yeah.
um of Call of Cthulhu, and it was a lot of fun. It was very very different. I remember, but that's something that I would love to do more of a deep dive into.
I want to do I've been trying to get into a Call of Cthulhu game for so long. It's like my white whale right now. I got into a Vampire the Masquerade game. It's like revised slash second or third edition game. And I was like I was like, oh, I'm a little excited about it because I've always wanted to try a vampire, but it ended up being so much fun. I play that maybe once a month, maybe twice a month, depending on everybody's schedule. And it also like the one cool thing I love about playing other systems, it opens your eyes to like how other games solve their problems and how they handle things like intrigue or, how do you handle small town politics? So I really enjoy playing other tabletop RPGs and figuring out like what they do, and that kind of informs me when I do all the other random stuff I do. So if I were to like run a Dungeons and Dragons game now, since I've been playing Vampire the Masquerade with a ton of intrigue and like politics, I feel like I'd be better able to take those tools and like employ them
And
in
apply them. Yeah.
yeah, and apply them in 5e, which is I think that's I always tell people if you've been playing 5e for a long time, and even if you're still enjoying it and you still want to play more of it, just try something else because you never know what like cool things you're gonna find.
Right.
Do you have like a wish list of games? And I guess you could take this however you want. You could like tabletop RPG games or even video games and stuff like that. Do you have like a wish list right now that you are like dying to try?
Top of the list is Gloomhaven. I really, really want to try getting a game of that going. And one of my friends who, Pat, Colin, and I grew up with, he still lives near me. he has like the full, like, I guess, first season, is that what they call it?
Mhm.
Like the first like big box set.
Oh, I
And
have that also.
it is absolutely intimidating to see him like pull it out, like put it on the
It's
table, and I'm just like, holy shit, why is this a thing? But I
it's very
really
heavy.
want to play.
I
um
tried so hard to get that game going. So me and my wife are looking for like couple friends. And my idea was like, oh, we can get some couple
Ruh-roh.
friends and we can like center the stuff around Gloomhaven. So I bought Gloomhaven secondhand from another friend. And then I got some friends over, some couple friends, because we were just like trying to double date, triple date stuff. And got some couple friends over, and then was like, all right, so we got to watch a 15-minute YouTube video that's going to do the explainer, and then there's like a 35-minute YouTube video, and then we can attempt to play. And then they all just like looked at me like I was insane. And then my wife like put her hand on my shoulder and it's like, or we could just play something else. And I was like, a part of me died that day.
or or we could just do Jenga.
Basically, honestly, basically we played Dominion instead.
Okay, that's
But yeah.
I'm trying to think what else. I have yet to play through um Elden Ring.
Oh, I still need to beat it
That is,
too.
it's still on my to-do list. Kind of a funny story. I am awful at the Souls-like games. Like, it's so during COVID, back in my old apartment, I was living with two other guys. One of them had a PlayStation, so of course we started all trying to run through Dark Souls 3. And I was really, really bad at it. And I shouldn't say was. I am still really, really bad at it. And I think I'm at like the second to last boss. And I've been at the second to last boss for 2 years. So whenever I go over there to hang out, like we always joke around, oh, maybe we should play Dark Souls and Matt can finally finish
Finally beat it.
it.
Oh,
And I'm just
man.
like, nope, I'm not touching that because I don't feel like hating myself.
So
um,
I think Elden Ring, you might do better with Elden Ring. I think Elden Ring, it has a high, it's actually, I do think it has a higher challenge curve, but it
mhm.
gives you a lot more tools to deal with things. So, like, if you're a spellcaster, you can kind of, I mean, it takes a lot of sacrifices in other areas, and like, you will be a glass cannon, but you can get pretty far just by like zapping people and
Yeah,
dodging well.
I get that. And the thing is that I am totally turned off by that though, because after seeing my friend basically cheese his way through Dark Souls 3 was with like this like sorcerer build, like just ranking up only like magic and shit. And meanwhile, I'm over here like actually trying to use like a sword and maybe some like prayers and whatever. Uh and like having the worst time of my life. He's like, "Oh, this is so easy." So I just have no respect for magic users.
That's hilarious. You refuse to do the thing to make it a little easier. Oh my god. I think even beyond that though, there's a lot of extra stuff to like make things a little bit easier. It like
Whatever.
did you just make a mouth part? Well, no, I was just saying like even for like melee builder, like melee classes, they add like your weapons have certain skills and like kind of magic like effects that you can use. So it's like even if you are
Mhm.
purely a melee character, there's like a reason to have mana.
Yep.
So it gives you a lot of tools, and then you have summons and all sorts of stuff to like balance things out. So I
Mm,
highly recommend it. It's really good. I think it's probably the best Souls game that I've ever played.
okay. I will take that into consideration once I get monies.
Gotta get that moolah. But
Yeah.
yeah, no. So is there? So what was that? Gloomhaven and Elden Ring. Anything else that's like on the list?
Nothing that is screaming off the top of my head.
Or
Nothing I can think of as of yet.
I think for me, yeah, it's mostly just tabletop RPG stuff. Like I really want to play Starfinder. I really want to play Call of Cthulhu. There is going to be an upcoming Warhammer 40K game called Dark Tide, which is very similar to Vermintide 2, but it's set in the 40K universe instead of just the regular Warhammer one. I am so like weirdly pumped for it. I can't even describe it. It just looks like the
I remember
perfect amount of fun.
I remember you were trying to get all of us into Vermintide for a little bit.
Oh my god, Vermintide's so much fun. It's Left for Dead, but you have like sledgehammers and you're fighting giant rats. It's amazing. So I'm really excited for that. That's on the list. I've actually been bugging Fat Shark, the developer on TikTok, to give me an advanced
you're
copy.
trying to get a free copy. Oh my
I'm trying to
god,
get an advanced copy. I
you
was like, "Hey, I
monster!
make memes semi-successfully for Dungeons and Dragons. I will switch topics and do Warhammer 40K memes explicitly for you if you send me an advanced copy." No
Yep.
response. So we'll see.
She's like, oh
Um,
yeah, who's this moron?
it's basically probably some like intern at their office, like, who the
this
fuck is this guy?
this wannabe influencer. They're just like noses turned up at you. Like, come on,
I mean, not too far away. I mean, I'm a wannabe influencer. Um, that is accurate. I want to be that. I want to get paid full time just to like look at a camera and say stupid shit occasionally. Um, that is the goal.
don't we all?
That is the truth. Um, are you like because I have the kind of, me and my younger brother have the distinction of really being the only nerdy people in our family. Like my dad has some like nerdy interests, like he likes Star Trek and he likes Star Wars and stuff like that, but he doesn't portray himself as a nerd. Are you like the lone nerd in your family, or is everybody like a little nerdy?
I would say everybody in my family has their own little nerd ticks. So actually, the first time that I heard ever about Dungeons and Dragons was my mom telling a story about how her uncle, basically ran her and her cousins through, a campaign and stuff. And I have this this one particular memory where she's describing it, and I guess like, their characters died, and he was like, "Oh, you just got eaten by the gelatinous cube." Which, fun fact, was one of the reasons I included the gelatinous cubes in my campaign as a bit
Oh,
of a
nice. We'll
shout
call
out
back.
to my mom. Yeah. Um, my dad was a very big Spider-Man fan growing up. I think I said that already. All of us pretty much into, the whole Marvel scene. We all make fun of DC for trying too hard.
Except for Batman.
Um,
Batman's great.
I adore Batman. Um, I think my brother was actually the first one out of all of us to play Dungeons and Dragons, like, of my siblings. And I actually think he was playing 4th edition,
Ooh.
which was interesting. I remember hearing like little bits and pieces about it, and I saw a couple character sheets, but it was never something that I had the opportunity to. And I think throughout the years, we've definitely we've kept our toes in it. And I remember my brother, like he ended up playing a game of 5th edition with some of his friends, and then I invited him over, and I ran a one shot. He was a what was he? He was like a Triton, because he's really big into fishing. So I was like, all right, let's make you
Fish
this
boy.
sea elf Triton, based loosely off of some smorgasbord of the Trailer Park Boys. His name was Deer Racken.
Oh my god.
And it was not a sober game. I will tell you that.
That sounds like so much fun, though.
It was a blast, and I know I had a lot of fun running that, and I think everybody else, well, from what they remember, they had a great time.
Yeah, me and my brother, so me and my younger brother, we separately kind of came into Dungeons and Dragons.
Mhm.
I think he started playing in high school, and I didn't start playing until I was probably graduated from college. And it wasn't until I was driving him, like years later, I was driving him from home, like, because our hometown was in North Carolina. He lived like Western North Carolina. He lived and was going to school in Central Carolina, and I was living in Northern Virginia, DC. So
Yep.
he was kind of sort of on the way. So we were just like sitting there, and me and my then fiance or girlfriend and now wife, we were just kind of like making aimless banter. And then I was like, "Yeah, what do you like? What do you do in your spare time at college?" Like, "Oh, I play Dungeons and Dragons." And like my wife, like Jasmine, just like put her head in her hands and like breathed so loud as I'm like, "You play Dungeons and Dragons? I got a podcast. You know about my podcast?"
That's so wholesome.
And we geeked out about it for a long time. And now
I'm
he
so
joined.
sorry for Jasmine
Yeah,
being in that
no,
car.
no, I've wrangled her into it now as well. She plays Dungeons and Dragons, like very begrudgingly, but she does. Um, but yeah, we kind of like really bonded over that, and now we play a game together every other week. I mean, I've invited him to my games. He doesn't really invite me to his games, which I think is a little insulting. But like, I guess I could shame
Older or
him for
younger
that.
brother?
He's my younger brother. But yeah, so that's always been fun. And then like me and my older brother, when I was like really young, like 6 or 7, we played Dungeons and Dragons for like a hot minute until our parents found out and told us we couldn't do it anymore.
Uh-oh.
And
Did they think you were summoning the devil?
more or less. And it was one of those things where like me and my older brother don't always see eye to eye, and he's like adamantly like trying not to be a nerd, even though I think there is a nerd somewhere deep down there. My sister could like give a shit about any of this stuff. Like anytime me and my younger brother start talking, she little like her eye roll is so large it probably changes the fucking gravity of the moon. Like it probably alters its axis.
That's so funny.
But no, yeah. Then my parents, I think my dad, if I pushed my dad and like got him into it, he probably would do it. But I think my mom would never, because I still think there's a little piece of her that thinks it's devil worship.
Mhm.
Just a little teeny tiny piece somewhere deep inside.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Oh man. So I'm going to ask you a very tough question. And I do like could potentially be like a little politically charged question.
Shit.
If you could change one thing about our podcast, what would it be?
Oh, why you got to do this?
No, yeah, I love watching people deal with this.
I think I would change. See, now you got me thinking, because now I got to think about, okay, what do we struggle with? What could we do better? Is it a question of what we need to improve, or if I could just magically just change something and instantly make it better, what would it be?
I mean, it's up to you. It could be either one. If you could change one thing, be like, I wish Colin didn't exist anymore. I wish he was blipped out of existence, a la like Thanos gauntlet
snap.
Yeah.
Yep, I am inevitable. I would say I wish that we leaned more into the rotating DMs. And I wish that we did it on a more listener-friendly schedule.
Yeah.
So, and this is something I was talking with Colin about this the other day too. I know, so, from the, I'll backtrack a little bit just because I have two different trains of thoughts going here. So when I was first designing my campaign, one of the big things that I knew I wanted to include was some form of like a time loop. Like I thought that would be a really fun mechanic. Wasn't something that I had seen before. I thought I was a genius for coming up with it. Find out after the fact, there's this one podcast has a much bigger listening thing. You might have heard of it. It's called The Adventure Zone.
Yeah.
The 11th Hour. And then I was like, oh, I guess maybe I'll take like a listen or two to this. And I really liked how their mechanic fit into the time frame of an episode.
Yeah. It would click down every episode. That would be the end.
Exactly. Like they would have like one or two, iterations of a loop in an episode, because they were working like in game in an hour. But, for a podcast, like their shows, I think they ran for like maybe an hour and a half. And so taking that principle outside of the game, one of the things that I guess we advertise ourselves as a podcast where we rotate DMs. And I think that's something that we've only done it like 3 or 4 times in the 2 years that we've been doing this. Like it's something that I wish that we leaned a little bit harder into. And I know like obviously like there's a whole lot of logistical issues of like, okay, why, what would make this difficult? How do you keep a consistent story going? But I think that's something I wish that a little better. When we talk about our, behind the scenes about, where we want to see it. That's always like something that's in the forefront of my mind. How can we keep this core identity of rotating DMs all telling basically a yes and story?
Yeah, I agree. It would be a lot more challenging, I think, but it would be a
Mm-hmm.
lot cooler if instead of like doing whole arcs, we were doing like segments. We'd get
Right.
3, 4 episodes max, and then it has to be shifted no matter what is going on, because that would lead to a lot of interesting narrative choices that we would have to make. And, oh, we were literally in the middle of a battle and now it's a new DM. Like, how does that work?
Because I
I
mean,
think
it's
that
a
could
challenge to the DM, which I think is always fun, but it's also I don't know anywhere else that does that, and that idea just seems really interesting to me.
no, I like that. I thought that would be a fun change in my opinion. Now, I'll bleep this out, but give me the unpolitical, like full on answer that you wanted to give. You wanted to get rid of Pat, right? Silence. So that's it. I'm going to take silence as yes.
I would not change any of our cast. I wish that we were a little more diverse, but
That's true.
you can only go so far with a bunch of guys sitting around a table.
It's true. There's only so many white bearded men you can fit at a table. And we're reaching that limit almost.
Yeah.
Um, but I think my beard is getting longer, so that's one way to differentiate all of us between everybody.
I'm glad you got that going for you.
Yeah, I'm getting a bigger beard. It's the way of the world.
Hello, popping in for a very brief breakaway here. It is the end of a season in the Dice Populi community. Normally that entails a lot of info, but this was a short season and I'm traveling. So, this is going to be pretty tight. Really, I just want to spotlight those of you who have contributed to our Discord. Seasonal ranks go as follows. In third place of all members, ranked by Uge, whose experience makes them eligible to receive a paid prize from our merch store or just D&D paraphernalia. Third place is JP Bart at level 9 with 5.2 thousand messages over the last 2 months. Second place, let me know if you've heard this one before, Sam Hertasi, level 12, 7.9 thousand messages. And our winner this season, the monarch of the New Age itself, is Iron Skull at level 16 with 13.4 thousand messages. So I'll be reaching out to you over the next week or two, Iron Skull, to get you set up with some swag. But this does mean that we are throwing another person back into the mix. Takale the Bread Prince himself, good old Kale, can earn seasonal XP again. So keep an eye out there, because something smells delicious in the kitchen. I'd also like to call attention to our Patreon. We're pumping out content more regularly than ever. We have some more character stuff on its way, more episodes of Entrenched, more behind the scenes. Trying to keep that baby a churning as much as possible. We're starting to have real conversations about where Dice Populi is going to go after Dicey Waters, and whether or not we have the financial support to make these things happen is a huge part of those discussions. So, on one hand, you'll be supporting the show. On another hand, you will be getting a bunch of cool content. And on some other mystical third hand, there are soundtracks and other things that we hope to release to the community, but frankly, just need a little bit of help getting it done. We don't have a community project to announce for the next season, but we do have a few other things up our sleeves for the coming months. That said, if you want more details, just go to dicepopuli.com. We'll have a full news post as normal, but let's get you back into the conversation. Thank you so much for listening, and have fun.
I think I talked a little bit about this with Colin. I don't think I talked about this with Pat, but Colin so I'm going to get more specific into our podcast and maybe about D&D. So Colin was never really meant to be part of the main cast. He was a kind of surprise drop-in the Turtle Island arc.
Correct.
Do you feel like that because I've always kind of felt like that was a purposeful choice because God, I'm blanking on his name right now, but the DM knew Josh was gonna he knew he was like getting out of there, and he's like, I'm just gonna like force Colin into the scene. What was your reading of that? Do you think Do you think that like we lost or gained something by that kind of ephemeral Bait character becoming part of the main cast? Especially considering there's a lot of baggage that comes with Bait because he is like this kind of semi-godlike NPC that Colin created.
He's a plot device.
Yeah.
I think I don't want to speculate about what Josh's intents were. He thought he did what he thought he needed to, and I respect that. I do like, I mean, at least the way that he and Colin tell the story was that he was basically like, hey Colin, you're just kind of sitting there on the sidelines twiddling your thumbs. Do you want to play this game? Which honestly, if I was in Colin's position, I absolutely would have jumped in and said, yes, I will 100% do this. Like, because I don't, I get major FOMO sometimes. Now, as for the addition of Bait to the party, there are times where I wish, this is absolutely nothing against Colin, I wish that he played him as a character and not as a plot device.
I get what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah. Because I know like he has like he wants to try to like lead people to whatever conclusion that he's collaborating with the DM to help them get to that point, to to get all the everything realized. But I think there are times where the character of Bait comes across as a little too convenient sometimes. I I know the running joke is, how many times can we kill Bait before he comes back, or before he stops coming back? And we still don't have an answer to that.
Bait's like a cockroach. He'll survive a nuclear bomb. He will outlive us all because I think the funniest part of that was when he fell off the tree and then like he had to like I can't. I don't think we kept a lot of that in, but him and Josh had to have like a 20-minute conversation like
about how much HP he had. Yep.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yep.
No, I'm kind of thinking about a similar page. I do wish, like, I like Bait. I think he is added to the story. And I love Colin. I think Colin's done a great job of role playing and all that stuff. I do wish that maybe we had come up with a separate character for Colin to play, even though it may have been a little bit more difficult for Colin to kind of parse that out. Just because Bait is plot device.
We'd have to give Colin another voice to do.
Yeah. My goal is to get as many Collins in one room to speak with each other as possible in the podcast. That is the goal. So as many of our listeners will probably know, you play Maeve, which is the kind of like the young lady sorcerer that may or may not be like the offspring of Asmodeus or some other like foul demon thing.
Or Asmagath. Because one of them.
Yeah, asthma something. I feel like that was very convenient. It's like asthma something because I was like, oh, Asmodeus.
So that was the original intent. Like I was going to say Asmodeus, but because that's like more 5e lore, we didn't want to get into any issues there. I think that's why we strayed away.
I'm still on the team. So
that's why I was like, I said, some asthma guy.
Asthma guy. So when we first, so this is a little bit of like background lore. When we first came up with the podcast, we were like, it needs to be a homebrew setting. It needs to be this. We need to like separate it from everything that's 5e. And I was like, why do we have to do that? And Colin's like, well, I don't want any IP issues. And I was like, IP issues with what? And he's like, Wizards of the Coast. I want them to like take our stuff. And I was like,
into intellectual property, not
intellectual
internet, not I like IP address.
Yeah, like intellectual property. So I was like, I don't think we have to worry about that. And he's like, nah, man, we have to worry about that. And then like over the next couple of years, it's just me every time listening to a new podcast that gets like they're all like using official monsters and they're all using the official stuff. It's like we could have saved so much time, or at least I could have. We were just like official pantheon of gods or something. I mean,
yes, but I do kind of like where we've kind of taken our which coincidentally I guess I kind of gave you guys the first taste, except for Cult, but
So speaking of our characters, so like I was saying before, you are the pilot inside of Maeve's head. How do you feel about Maeve at this point in the juncture? We are much closer to the end than we are to the beginning. do you feel like good about the progress that Maeve has made as a character? Or do you feel like there's still a lot to be said about Maeve and her adventure personally?
I really like the story that uh that's been able to be told through her. So when I first started playing as her, I was just gonna have her be like this, happy-go-lucky sorceress who, just going through the world, maybe accidentally got in some trouble, which, that's how she ended up with the Mage Lords. But the real turning point for that was when the Stonehall Massacre happened.
Things got dark.
I like I remember when we played that night, and it was on Sunday because I had my regular my weekly game after that. And I get there and I'm just like, guys, no spoilers from the podcast. My character just accidentally massacred a whole town. I'm gonna have several drinks tonight. And because I felt so bad. Like, I've never had anything like that happen before. So then I guess like I kind of tried to shift her character into something like, okay, now she's just gonna try to do her best to help people and try to be this more positive force. Which I think has been there's been some interesting little tidbits between like her and cult's mentalities and how basically the way that the group goes about things, and maybe realizing that the group is not always the good guys.
What? I don't know about that. We are righteous.
Man. Well, yeah, you could say a lot of people were righteous and they were still wrong.
Oh my god. I still use that. So that like whole kerfuffle, I use that as an example. When people ask me like what's like the biggest game changer that ever happened to you like mid-session.
100%.
Both of the things that happened. So the raffle, I did like not in my wildest dreams would I thought you guys would have like started a raffle with a bunch of toilet paper. And then
it was still my idea.
I never would have thought. Well, there was just like the sequence of events. Like, oh, we're gonna do a raffle. The raffle's purpose is to create a situation where we're using all of these innocent townspeople as bait, and then we're gonna accidentally massacre like a third to half of them after basically getting our asses kicked by the monster. So it's like I use that as an example. People ask about like, oh, how do you overcome certain challenges, or like, what's the weirdest thing that's ever happened to you, and like, what's the biggest reset you've ever had to do like mid campaign? Like that is the biggest reset. It's like everything that could go wrong did go wrong, while also still being extremely dramatic and I think very interesting to listen to.
I thought so. I enjoyed that arc immensely.
It was wild, and I think it did a really good job because I do like that happened very early on. So that kind of set the precedent early on that like we're not going to hold back on the tough stuff. Like thank Pat for like figuring like basically like reminding me, because I had all these things going on and my brain was like Swiss cheese because I had to like I was already rewriting parts of my adventure because of the raffle thing and all that stuff. So I was like, and then Pat was like, oh God, you're right. And I was like going through all the things that I had like said and set up and all the notes. I was like, oh my God, like there is like 300 people in the area and at least 100 of them are easily within range of this. It was a very cold realization. But no, I think it made for great radio, I think.
It definitely did something, that's for sure.
That's for sure. It ruined us all a little bit inside.
Yeah, but to come full circle here, I really have enjoyed playing as Maeve. It's a lot of fun, and that's all. That's all I could ever hope to have.
No, yeah, I think you've done a great job playing Maeve. I think Maeve has been a very good grounding rod for the podcast, because I think even though she is maybe the most unstable in power and some of the effects she's had but on like things that she has done, but as a person, as like she's basically the tent pole of the group. She is she is the stable ground by which all of us
Okay.
other characters do crazy shit around.
Keep it coming, man. Like this is nice to hear.
No, yeah. No, and then I think like Maeve's a great foil too, because like the way that she handles cult, I always enjoy that. It's like, yeah, let's do something wild and crazy, and then Maeve's like, okay, or we could not,
or we could just. Well, yeah, I'm trying to think. What was the last time she was actually on board with a cult plan? Was it?
I don't think she's ever been on board with a cult plan. At least not willingly.
Yeah. Oh well.
I mean, there's been a bunch of stuff. I think there was even like everybody got so angry when Cult was slurping souls with the little soul cage thing. And like, this guy's bad. I can't, like, if I do a bad thing to a bad person, there's nothing wrong with it.
If you say so.
Yeah, that's Cult's way of seeing it. I mean, honestly, Cult is all goal. He's goal orientated, and whatever means are to the end of that, it's just fine. It's whatever.
I mean, I respect it, but I also kind of I love to hate Cult. Like he's definitely like one of my favorite characters. I love to hate everything that comes out of his mouth. I'm just like, ugh.
My goal with Cult,
well, you do a great job of portraying that. Like
Yeah,
that's good on you for making me feel that way.
my goal with Cult was to be like, is there a way that you could kind of sort of love like the most unlovable thing in the world? Like, I have given him a lot of eccentricities that make him unappealing from so many different angles. And
you don't say.
yeah, no, it's all purposeful. Like, he's a libertarian, he's a necromancer, he's a bit of a cannibal. Like, the list goes on. He is like abjectly a monster, but it's played like I play him with a sincerity. Like, it doesn't like he has the most innocent intentions for the most part. It's just that he doesn't care. It's not that like it's innocent. It would be more innocent if he didn't know any better, but it's just that he doesn't care. He's like a child that like is playing a video game. That's how I play him.
It's very fun.
He understands that the things are bad. If you had to do it all, well, like let's say we did like season 2, would you say you had the choice between doing like an updated different version of Maeve or a completely different character? What would you do?
I think it would depend on how everyone else does. I think that if we go into a completely new setting, something that isn't related to our current world, I would most likely change characters, and maybe there'd be some hijinks where we'd run into our old characters at some point, and I think that could be fun. But in the off chance where it's like, oh hey, we were all in basically the Matrix, and we all wake up and now we're in this like fucking tech space Spelljammer ship. I'm just writing plot lines here, man. That's all I'm saying.
Honestly, that would work pretty good. We were basically plugged into the Matrix, and now we were in a video game, and we forgot we were in a video game and we wake up in the real world. I could dig on that.
Yeah. And then for the third season, we'd basically be like, oh, you guys were just incepting that the whole time.
Yes, we were being incepted. No, yeah, I like that idea. We should just do that. We should really play off that it was all a dream every single campaign.
It's so cheesy, and I would definitely roll my eyes a little bit, but like just like, oh really? This is the creative thing that they came up with? Wow, how fucking original!
Oh, and they're doing it again for the third season. Oh, great!
Oh god, what's that? That's gonna be like 10 years later, right? If we're still doing that.
Oh my god, yeah. It's hard to think. Like, it's hard to kind of conceptualize how long we have been doing this podcast.
It's 2 years, like pretty much. Like when was our first episode released?
Oh man, I
thought it was in July of 2020.
I think it was even before that.
I am scrolling back
I want to say
right
it was
now.
2019, I think.
19. Okay, yeah, August 7th. 2019. That's when we released Welcome to Our Table.
Yeah, because it was before the vid happened, like before the vid.
Okay, so wait, that's like a week and a half. maybe we should do something.
Yeah, the 3-year anniversary is coming up very soon. Yeah, we probably should do something for that. We should.
We should.
I'm gonna make a quick note in the Discord. Where is that for planning? Hey,
August 7th. Yep.
Hey y'all. At everyone.
We just realized.
We just realized 3 years of the podcast will be Aug 7th. We should do something.
Yep.
And I misspelled something, but I'm keeping it. Butterfingers.
It's a very chaotic way of spelling something.
Something.
Yeah.
So if I were to, so the same question to me, I would be a little bit torn because one, I love coming up with new characters and like, coming through the whole, so I think we were talking about Pathfinder a little while back and you saying that you like the crunch. I love the crunch and I will stay up at night trying to make a Pathfinder character. Like
when I first started like getting into D&D, that was all I did. Like I was like, oh man, what if I like threw this together? How could I like?
Yeah,
I know there's a lot of hate on the internet about the people who like try to like over optimize things. Like, oh, you could do like max damage, you could get like a plus 30 to this one roll, and I'm just like, okay, cool. Like I want to play a mechanically strong character that's good at something, but I don't want it to take away from anybody else. Or just like completely overshadow. That's how I like to play my character.
Oh yeah, I get that. Yeah, I try to do the same, but like there is a part of me that's like I want to do a very specific thing. Like I want in Pathfinder it's much easier. It's like I want a paladin that smites through punches and is basically one punch man. And then I'll go down the rabbit hole and figure out like in what ways is this possible? What are the trade-offs? Like what are the things I need to do for it to like work? And like when will it be effective to actually be usable? And that that'll keep like there's been times it's like 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm like staring at my phone as I'm reading through this build and it's like I need to go to bed.
Yeah.
So I love coming up with new characters, but there is a part of me that wants to infect other people's game universes with cult. I've done it on several other podcasts where I've been like, I'm going to play a version of my character from this other podcast. There's a little piece of cult in a lot of other people's podcasts. I did a shadow run and it was basically cult did some weird magic and just ended up in Shadowrun.
Oh my god.
In a Shadowrun world, and it worked surprisingly well. She's just a fucking bumbling buffoon that doesn't understand technology, but like everything just kind of like works at his command.
That tracks.
He was basically just my dad because like he had a phone and everything, but he had no idea how to use it. He was like making calls and not realizing it.
Minus like the fucking like 3 or 4 dead bodies just like shambling behind him.
Oh man, if I could get
casual.
I think I was too early of a level to have like practical undead in Shadowrun if that exists, but I was like trying to figure it out for a long time. Yeah, so I love infecting other people's. That's why there is like a cult analog in the quest game that we have Entrenched. Like there is, he's in the background still.
That's really funny.
There. He's like Wanda in the Marvel comics. I can't remember what she's called. She's like a quantum point. What do they call him? She's like a fixed quantum point in the MCU or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Cult is that. There's always a version of cult in any game that I DM or deal with. And it's usually just part of it's just because of the voice. I love doing that voice, and it's an easy evil guy voice.
So question for you. How did you come up with that voice?
Oh, that was a lot of time in like the shower. Just like,
do you have? Okay, that tracks. I was gonna ask, like, do you have a process that you go through when you're coming up with voices? And I guess to add on to that, do you do voices for other characters that you play as?
Yeah, I try to do voices anytime I'm doing a tabletop RPG thing, just because I like if it's like a recorded thing, I want the listener to be able to tell the difference between what I'm saying and what my character is saying. And I find it really helpful as a dungeon master and as a player to be like what I'm saying to the table versus what I'm actually saying to the like in game. because I love it when my players do that, because it makes it really easy for me to understand the flow of what's happening. If they're speaking in their normal voice, they're obviously speaking like above the table. But if they're speaking in character, I know that that's like game. Like whatever they're saying
Yep.
out loud.
Yep.
And depending on the context, that can like change the flow of what's happening. Like if they say some weird shit in character in front of like a king, the king's gonna be like, okay, like get these fucking weirdos away from me.
Weird.
So I like that aspect. So I try to come up with a voice for each character. Cult's was like, so my original intention Cult was not my original character that I had in mind. I had two things that I wanted to do. I think one of them may have been one was a paladin, and I think the other one was a bard or a rogue. The paladin was going to be like a paladin of Keg. So he's basically going to be like all about getting drunk. And Keg is like this third party god I found just like searching for. He's like maybe like Bacchus.
I remember you were trying to sell us on Keg for a little bit.
I was trying to sell in Keg. So I was going to do Keg, and I think there was another one. It was going to be like some kind of multi-class.
We stand for Keg.
Yeah, we stand for Keg. But then Colin, I think I've mentioned before, Colin rolled all of our stats, and he rolled very well for everybody else's stats.
Yours were trash.
Mine were trash.
Very bad.
So I was like, oh, this guy can only be good at one thing, and there's only a handful of classes that you can really be good at one thing. Like wizards don't have health anyway, so it doesn't really matter if they have like a good con mod, and all they need is intelligence. Like everything else they can kind of make up for in various other ways. So that's what I did. And I was like, even as a wizard, he was going to be really soft and squishy and have like subpar health. So I was like, how do I make him better? And like, what are some of the reasons? And it was like, oh, so I'll do a cleric wizard thing. And cause we're starting at like level 3. And I was like, all right, so I have the thing that I want. I work backwards. So I kind of figure out the story, why he started as a cleric and is now a wizard. Like what, I was like, I want it to be a necromancer. I want it to be kind of dark. It's like, why did that happen? And then I kind of like worked out the voice. Like, what's a good, like, he's going to be kind of a villain in a friendly role. So like, what is that voice? So I started just like babbling off in like different accents. And I kind of landed on the cult one, and it's changed probably a little bit throughout time. I think I was a little harsher on my throat in the beginning. He was way more guttural, and now he's like a little less guttural. But yeah, now that's also one of my like go-to villain voices, I think, is Cult's voice. It's something that I can like do for a while and not like ruin my throat.
So it's funny, you met I always forget that Cult did that one level of cleric and then he's gone wizard. My character Rudy Rudy, he's also a cleric wizard. But pretty much like polar opposite of Cult. Like, you know, you went necromancy, I went with like divination, so I could do like some, you know, like I do like teleporting and shit, and you just do damage. And Rudy is kind of proper and lawful, and Cult is not
none of those things.
But it is kind of funny, just like hearing how you had take like similar. I guess like starting with a similar base, because I don't think I had a very good stat roll either, and just kind of forming that into the same thing but in different ways.
Yeah, how two different people attack the same problem. It's always interesting to see what they got the similar, what they got different.
Well, when I made Rudy, I was like, okay, the party's dying a lot. I want somebody who can save their ass a lot. Because we had like a barbarian, we had a paladin, like there wasn't a lot of like mobility. So I was like, all right, let me do like a master of time and space and can also like read the future and shit. Divination wizard, let's go.
Divination's a great wizard subclass too. It's a lot of fun.
Oh my god, the amount of there is this one time where we went a whole day and I still had a nat 20
as your portent
saved. Yep, as one of the portent rolls where I could, you know, give it to someone. And it gets to the end of the day, and there starts to be like this fight in the pub that we own between the characters. And so it gets to the point where our barbarian, bless his heart, rest in peace, decides that he's gonna take. He just looks at her DM straight in the eyes and says, "I want to shit on the floor." So, the DM was like, okay, I'm going to need you to roll Constitution for that. And then me and my infinite wisdom was like, no, you're getting a net 20 for
Oh
this.
my God.
And which, destroyed the bar. But it was, it's led to a lot of fun things. And I really, but he definitely, like, when I speak in his voice, like, he speaks like very proper, just like very almost over enunciates some of his words, kind of very going up and down throughout the register. And then
Whip cream, like whip,
maybe like a less obnoxious Stewie. I think that's a really great way to put it.
I like that. I love Stewie. I think it's a great place to be. Do you tend to find yourself like doing certain roles, like irregardless of the character that you create, you tend to find yourself like filling certain roles? So for example, I am playing like a fighter, like a dump stat charisma fighter in my game, in my Curse of Strahd game, but for whatever reason I am still somehow the face, even though I have a negative to charisma. Just because I think when I role play and when I play games a lot, I tend to want to like talk things out a bit. So I tend to like, even when I'm like, no, I'm going to be a fighter, I'm going to be like a bonk man. It's like, oh no, I'm still talking. Do you find yourself like gravitating towards a certain role when you role play?
I do. I really do. So I always somehow end up playing some form of utility caster. It's between Maeve, who, really doesn't do that much damage, but she does a bunch of other cool, useful shit. Rudy, who I was just talking about, like that party, they're a bunch of murder hobos. They're the fucking worst. And I'm the guy that periodically has to save their ass, or try to be the guy with the the 20 intelligence and not let the barbarian come up with the plan.
No, that's too true.
And then even in the Greek campaign, the Greek themed campaign that I was talking about before, I played a bard who I tried to make like a little more offensive. I had him as like a whispers bard. His name was Tatsiki, because I was told I needed a Greek themed name, and so that was literally the first thing that came.
My name is Sauce.
It was more like
cucumber sauce.
My name is Tatsiki, and I'm on a quest to find the person who made my village vanish.
And I basically like talked like that the whole time, except like maybe when there's an hour left of our campaign, to which point my voice was so raw, I would literally just be like, fuck the voice, which kind of became a bit of a meme, which was
fuck the voice. This ain't what Pat did. Fuck the voice. He's like, nah, this is, I made a poor choice.
That's exactly it. It was at that moment he knew.
So it's funny because I always gravitate towards being the voice and like to being a face. And for Vampire the Masquerade, which is a very social game, I made a choice to be a Nosferatu, which is basically like an impossibly ugly vampire. The whole clan is basically impossibly ugly. They've been cursed with like a face, like spaghetti faces, basically. And stat wise, it's basically you can't get. I think there's a couple. Instead of just having charisma, I think they have like, I think it's like split between a couple different things, but it's like, actually, I can actually look it up. Let's see here. Vampire Jack Morris. What is it? It's social. So they have charisma, manipulation, and appearance. So your appearance can never be more than 0. You can never improve your appearance. And then to like even cement it further, they have like a system where you can get, so they have like some points at the end of character creation that you can like put those into various different things. Like, oh, I can have a very strong mentor. I can have personal resources and contacts, that sort of thing. And you can get more of those points if you take some like flaws. And the flaws I took were basically to make him very socially awkward and even uglier to behold. So
I love that.
It's hilarious because like he's basically, to any non-vampire, he's a monstrosity, and even to vampires they look at him being like, oh boy. So I try to say something serious and like sometimes,
oh, woof.
Yeah, so it's like I've made him socially awkward to the point where like he gets serious debuffs if he's talking to a group of people, and another debuff if he talks to a group of people he doesn't know. So anytime I have to speak, I have to like to role play that. I have to keep that in mind. And then two, like sometimes the person running the game be like, yeah, they just look at you. Oh, he's Scottish. Like he tried to do his accent. He's like, yeah, they look at you and just they can't stop staring at your face. And I don't think they've quite heard anything you've actually said.
That's really funny.
Oh man. So I think doing something like that has like taken me out of the role a little bit, but I still keep on trying to like talk my way out of issues, and I've made the perfect trap for myself.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to play. I have another character in the wings. For for D&D. He's a bugbear who is missing one of his arms. But the cool thing is he is a way of the astral monk.
Ooh.
So he can basically kind of temporarily uses like chakra or whatever to get to bring his arm back if he ever needs it. It's also very good with shadow puppets. So
That's pretty solid. I like that.
I'm very excited. I want to play him so bad, but someday we'll get
Maeve
there.
could just take a header into the ocean and never be seen again, and all of a sudden we find a one-armed bugbear man. It's up to you. All right, we've approached.
I couldn't do that to Maeve.
Oh, you can do that. Yeah, she needs a better resolution, I suppose.
She really does. Besides, just poofing off to some other universe.
So we have reached more or less the end of our time here, but I do have one more question, and this is one that I think I've asked everybody also. What has been your best experience as a DM or a player?
As a whole, or with the podcast?
Just for any game you've ever played. What was your best experience as a DM or player? You can do it for both or one. Up to you.
Okay. I would say as a DM prior to when I first moved up to Albany, I kind of started to get a little more into the D&D thing. Colin actually started doing this thing. He where we out of like one of the game stores at the mall, we kind of started doing like our own D&D club thing, teach people to play D&D, kind of like what the hell is it called? Like the actual like official
Adventures
thing
League
that Wizards does. Adventures League. Yeah, kind of like that. And I remember, he was like, "Hey, do you like want to do this? Because I know you've played D&D before." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure." And I have this one distinct memory of running a group of 8 to 10 people through the first couple encounters of the Lost Mines of Phandelver or Phandalin, whatever the fuck it is. And basically, it ended up with this one person who, ended up getting a pet owlbear at the end of it, and just seeing like the looks on everyone's faces, like, "Oh my god, this is so cool! Like we have a friggin' owlbear now." I think that's something that I always have a little bit of pride for being able to bring that to someone else.
That is a great one.
It was a lot of fun. I would never DM for more than 8 people though ever again.
Oh, no, yeah, it's a nightmare.
It was, well, they were, it helped that everybody was kind of new, so I could definitely kind of have them a little more on rails. I think if I was playing with more experienced players who might try to, break the mold a little bit, I would struggle. But it was still a lot of fun.
Well, that sounds like a great time.
Yeah.
I think that's generally like my favorite part of playing Dungeons & Dragons, especially as like a dungeon master, is kind of like creating those moments for other people. That like creating that happiness, like something that I thought up and is like kind of pulling out of my butt, is like made people happy and like they're enjoying themselves. I think those are the memories that I kind of like that stick with me. And like whenever I look back on campaigns or like games that I've played, those are always things that I always like remember and always stick with me. Is like, you're creating happiness for people in a way. It's very rewarding.
Exactly. I do have one other thing though.
Oh, go for it.
It was a little homebrew one shot that I put together, where you have these players that gather in a town. They're on the hunt for this beast that's going in the woods and stuff. And at the end, the big reveal was that you basically ended up fighting actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf.
I love that.
And the reveal wasn't until after the fact. I basically I tried to put in as you're going through the video, right? Your foot, it's caught in a bear trap. So I had a whole an encounter where you had to go through bear traps and shit. And Shia LaBeouf, coming back to life. Shia surprise.
That's amazing. I love that.
It was a lot of fun. And then at the very end, because they didn't realize what they were fighting. And at the very end, I was like, "You finally safe from Shia LaBeouf." And then everyone's face was like, "Oh no, you didn't."
Oh no, yeah, that's the perfect meme game. That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's the kind of shit that I liked.
I love putting a good meme. So I had a Chult game, a Tomb of Annihilation game that I started with some friends from college, and one of my friends is super big into wrestling. Classic wrestling, current wrestling, he fucking he loves it. It's his pastime, it's his hobby. He helped start a league in DC, all this stuff. So when we were playing, especially when we first started out, we were playing in person back when I lived in DC. I would be hiding little Easter eggs of wrestling tidbits that I could anywhere I could find there'd be some times I can't remember. What was it? The name of the ship they came to was called the Clunogu, and it was spelled Hulk Hogan backwards. And when he's like, "This name is weird. What is this?" He's writes it out, and I was I thought he was gonna get it. It wasn't until months afterwards that we were the ship name came up. And yeah, I remember that name. It's a weird name. It's do you guys get it? They're like, what? It's do you not get what the name is? I'm no, what is it? It's spell it backwards, and they write it out, and they're like, "Oh my god!" It's I've been
watch out.
Yeah, and they've been getting other ones too, because I named all the starting characters after minor wrestling celebrities and stuff like that, and they got some of those, but they didn't get the other ones. But that was a lot of fun. I love putting little memes in my games and campaigns.
When you're doing stuff like that with your friends, where the friend group, I feel that's the best. That's my favorite part about DMing.
Tailored to the audience.
Exactly. Know your audience.
Well, Matt, I think the time has come. Another episode of Between Two Rolls has come to a close. Do you have any closing remarks that you'd like our listeners to hear or to ponder about as we go out?
I don't think so. I think I'll kind of leave it to their imaginations. What would Matt say?
Yeah, leaving them wanting more. Well, thank you all for listening. This has been another episode of Between Two Rolls. And I think the only person I have yet to interview is it's definitely going to be Chowder next, I feel unless I somehow interview myself. So stay peeled for that. That'll probably be coming up another fifth Wednesday, or maybe some other vague time slot that we could figure out. But yeah, stay tuned, and thank you for listening.